Welcome back to HGC North American Playoffs here, ladies and gentlemen, where we are tied up 1-1 between Team Octalysis and HeroesHearth Esports. It's been a back and forth series between the two so far. Nobody really been able to pull ahead majorly in one area or another, but after that last game specifically, you know, there's something I got to bring up here, or at least want to talk about and bring to light, is with how many deaths we saw kind of getting caught out. We talked about the Artanis with the kind of model onto the Phoenix and the success that Octalysis was able to gain for themselves. That, you know, historically in the past, when there are very tense games, very severe games, somebody who's played a long time with the guy, you've played against him for a long period of time, Arthlon was the man who was getting caught out, and it's something that mentally I can see with this much weight on his shoulders as a roster like that, it might be enough to kind of like teeter-totter, and we got to be looking at his play going forward for the rest of the series, because he can be the make or break for HeroesHearth Esports. We've talked about it. It feels like when they stepped up as a roster, a lot of it was when his play was able to back up other, you know, kind of big names on the roster like Crowan.
I think a lot of it will come down to it. And if we actually look at the early game of the last two games, Octalysis has actually gotten off to pretty hot starts. Even on Towers of Doom, they got off to a great start. Right out of the gate, they got out. And then also they're on Tomb of the Spider Queen. So I really wonder if we're going to see maybe a change of pace a little bit for HeroesHearth, because they did have something of a minor comeback, but they were never able to reestablish any ground in that second game. So Octalysis, for what it's worth, has looked strong in the early parts of these games.
It's going to be interesting to see if they manage to get the upper hand here as we look at a battleground for game number 3 between the two teams. And it's going to take place at the selection of Octalysis on Sky Temple. Any immediate thoughts here for either one of these teams' strengths or weaknesses on Sky Temple, fan?
Yeah, Sky Temple, that's a very rotational based map. The first thought that I have is that global is very high priority. You know, Dahaka is a very highly contested pick normally on this map. Very good for Goku, so totally understand why Octalysis is going here. Plus, HeroesHearth, if they decide to do something about those globals in the first slot, then they might not be able to get the Hanzo or the Maiev, all of which are very strong on this map as well.
We'll find out as we get the draft ready here. I'm assuming that we're probably going to see our standard Medivh Maievs, but I would really like to see a mix-up there between the two.
We're not seeing anything.
Yeah, never mind. Bring it back here. I just wanted to see our pretty faces. Let's be real here. Look at that. Look at the fan smile. How do you say no to that? You don't. That's.
I was born with this, guys.
So you're born with natural. So that's all I heard is it's all natural, boys. Dust the shoulders off. Not a big deal.
He in the downtime, we're all sitting here. He's just constantly.
Ooh, now everyone knows, Jay-How. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's initiation period.
because fans' Twitter feed is just full of selfies, just full of selfies.
Yeah, there's actually a full Twitter handle dedicated to him, fan selfies.
Yeah. At FanHots, if you want to see my selfies, make sure you follow me on Twitter.
Make sure to follow him.
You know you now have to post a selfie, right?
All right, that's fine. That's fine.
I'll be there with you.
It's not a selfie if there's two, Jay-How. By definition.
Selfie is when you bring in others to make them feel welcome.
All right, I'm done with this conversation. We're moving on to the Sky Temple conversation, bringing it back here to the game as we're waiting here for the draft between HeroesHearth and Octalysis. We talked about it probably going to be a priority onto the Dahaka, especially when looking at Octalysis. That is, I mean, Goku's go-to. I feel like if you have a hero that you know Goku on, I feel like that's got to very much be it. I'm wondering if we're going to still see, I want to say, as wild of a draft adjustment that we got from Octalysis. It was successful with the movement into the Artanis, but are we still going to see that level of like diversity and creativity within their compositions? Because normally, if you see that after one loss within a series of this weight, I normally go, that's a problem, but then they had success with it. So do you go back to that?
Well, again, my biggest thing with this team has always been them trying to do too much. But when you are laser focused on a series like this, where you know the probability of facing HeroesHearth is high, you've been preparing all year long, some of these strategies you've honed enough, and they get a little bit easier, I think, as we're going to get the Medivh. We'll see if we get the Maiev. The Maiev seems extremely likely here.
Yeah, and another interesting pick to note here is the Garrosh. Justin has shown very high emphasis on that Garrosh pick, very comfortable with it, and he's gotten his team early game leads both games, so we'll have to see what HeroesHearth prioritizes for that first pick.
Okie dokie.
I mean, I said he's one of the best heroes in North America as a response to the Garrosh, but I didn't think it would be first pick on Sky Temple level worthy.
See if HeroesHearth maybe has a few tricks up their sleeve.
Is this more cheese than it is anything. Why first pick in this position over the 2-3? Because normally to my brain right now, off the top of my head, would go, Tyrael hasn't been prioritized whatsoever. You can reliably get him in the 2-3, so why pick him in the first pick? He is a absolute, I cannot not have this, and that leads to more often than not a pocket strategy or cheese of the like. Fan thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you there. There's no question they could have gotten the Tyrael later on in the draft if they wanted, which means they're either running a very cheesy composition or they want to flex every other one of their positions. They do not want to dedicate any resources into the DPS or the support.
The Haka, obviously, as you had mentioned, does come to mind for both these teams and the Global on this Battleground. So the Haka, if it does make it through here, again, some strategies are definitely going to be coming out. And we see the ETC, no Garrosh this go around. Garrosh a little bit different on this Battleground because he can be a little bit more of a punching bag. You know, we talk about the Global, depending on if Dahaka comes up, ETC is not a bad, there's an Abathur. ETC is not a bad secondary laner. He still has the potential Global for that stage dive, and it's something that, you know, we've seen certain teams go down in the past, so.
Yeah, and it seems like HeroesHearth is choosing to go into that all-out dive composition with the Tyrael. Once upon a time, this was one of the best, if not the best compositions in the game when it came to Sky Tempo. You would get your Genji Abathur or your Greymane Abathur, pair it with the Tyrael. You would be able to roam extremely effectively, all-in extremely effectively, and Merc very well as well.
This is not out of the question that this might just be a solo support Abathur. Tyrael, self-sustain, lots of mobility. Genji, the deflect, lots of mobility. That's kind of the key elements if you're running these solo support Abathur. Can that person keep themselves alive? And so far, Tyrael, Genji can both do that.
And even though that has been the go-to kind of parameters necessary on Braxis holdout, I will say when I look at a solo support Abathur, if you are going to break it out in Sky Temple, you should be avoiding that because skirmishing should not be your highest priority. It should be having an off lane that is too oppressive to be able to deal with, especially with an Abathur hat, and you manipulate one lane to be so kind of lopsided that your structural advantage doesn't need you to go toe-to-toe in every team fight. And when I look at that composition, I go, you know, it's not going to be able to meet up that unless we have, you know, that Pocket Samuro come out in the last pick or something of the like. But we'll find out here as a Uther kind of being hovered, not wanting to deal with not only a possibility of Divine and Mosh, even though I'm assuming we're probably going to move into the stage dive within this game, but it's also great supporting towards that all-in threat that this composition is relying on.
False stat ban, making sure to take away any of those weird things that could happen.
Yeah, they are worried about the awkward global cheese strategies for Team Octalysis. And on the side of HeroesHearth, I think they're really looking at that Hanzo pickup now. Genji Abathur absolutely has what it takes to 100-0 and Hanzo very quickly as well. Genji by himself cannot do it too fast, but with the addition of the Abathur hat with the QW damage, he can easily one-shot Hanzo, so they do not want the Uther D-Shield to save him there either.
Gonna probably incentivize Rhaegar as probably the support on the side of Team Octalysis at this point in time then with that in mind.
Feels like everybody's reaching in to their bag of tricks at this point. I mean, these aren't anything wild, but they are. You're talking about the biggest series of the year for you. Trying to qualify for Sweden, you literally have nothing left. I mean, if you're hiding strats at this point, something's a little off.
Gonna get a Karazim and a Sonya.
Yeah, so Palm is a pretty good failsafe option for protecting your Hanzo, providing that he can hit the Palm itself. But on the other side, the block totem is actually extremely good against Genji as well. And if they choose to tech into something like a Greymane later on, it'll be good against that. This game is going to come down a lot on HeroesHearth. They want to force Octalysis to split up, and they want to get those picks while they're split. If Team Octalysis can kind of stay together as a 4-man and have Sonya just safe-soaking the entire time, just 4-man every objective, don't give HeroesHearth any opportunities to get the picks, they should be able to win the fights. But if they start splitting up, they can easily lose the game.
I look at this composition, you see the ETC, Karazim, Sonya, Hanzo. One of the best things that we talked about before was if the mule goes down, you have to have a composition that can go in and willingly take down those structures. It seems to me that the Karazim, Sonya, plus the ETC alone all have different options to make sure that that's a possibility, right?
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side, we do see HeroesHearth. They were actually the original inventors of the solo support Abathur idea, and they are going with that this game as well.
This is just
taking it to the next level.
This is taking it to the next level.
I'm concerned, I'll be honest. I've been able to back the approach that they've had with the solo support Abathur, but I do wonder if this is going to be as successful here in this game as we've seen it like on the likes of Braxis Holdout.
This is probably the trickier one. You know, Braxis makes sense. We've seen it in EU, kind of stumbled upon a little bit here with the Samuro, things like that, but
I was wondering if this is normally a game where I would actually be like, I would really like to see anything but Iron Fists in this case. Normally you'd be like, Iron Fist, especially when looking at Way of 100 Fists, post 16 can trade really well into high mobility targets like a Genji with an Abathur hat, and you can make him second guess his positioning a lot more. But I feel like whenever you're facing this Abathur composition, you should be looking at immediately how can I trade up in the supporting capabilities, and Transcendence has been touched enough to kind of get to that point. The only problem is Arthas is going to make it to where you can't auto-attack anything, so it's really not going to be a reliable source to make up for that kind of individual sustain necessary. Outside of the siege capabilities that Carzine provides to the early game, to be honest with you, I think that that pick is going to be something that might set them back. I think the Rhaegar would have, value-wise within this game, been able to help people like the Sonya or the Blaze look far and above better. The only thing that Hanzo stands out to me as, or excuse me, that Carzine stands out to me as a better pick is to individual survivability of the Hanzo. Ancestral, less likely to hit than Palm onto a Hanzo target because his HP is so low, but everyone else would have rather had this Rhaegar on their side. And I just wonder if that's enough to actually make up for the weakness of supporting that exists on the other side.
Honestly, at this point, you could even go 7-sided strike and just hope that you can kill them faster than they can kill you.
That's a good call. We'll find out what the case is going to be here as we have Game 3 ready to take off here.
My favorite part about Helion Dreadnought, you don't need one if you just kill the enemy team.
You know, as a guy who played support, I'd like to think that that role is not one that you can do without, but I understand where you're coming from here.
Ryan picked up here for Arthas his version of block. Obviously, we'll see what Cassia opts to go with charge strikes against an AoE healer. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. We have seen a little bit of Thunderstroke option because you do get single target damage as well as that splash damage. As it does hit a target, it tees out and goes perpendicular there. So we'll see. It is going to be the charge strikes.
And though this is actually, when you heard, you originally posed the Abathur as a solo support, right? And I was talking about on a map like Sky Temple, I don't think it's going to cater towards the, you know, kind of things that we've seen this double support or the solo support Abathur kind of come to light in other maps. And the main reason for that is we've seen it on Braxis, and I believe one game on Cursed Hollow we ended up getting it. And because of the rotations and delay and how many 3-versus-3 skirmishes exist on maps like that, granted Sky Temple does cater towards micro skirmishes, which Abathur should be pretty good at. The biggest problem here is that on a map like Sky Temple, I don't think it's going to have them long enough for it to be something that you can gain a major lead on. And the only other way you make up for that within this playstyle, when we've seen it on a map like Sky Temple, is by really bullying one lane and then being successful in that, trading even over the first couple of shots. And then by the time we get to the later stages, I have such a big shot advantage that nothing is going to matter. And when we look at HeroesHearth composition, there's no way that's going to be the case. They do not have siege capabilities. They have to win through skirmishing. So can Octalysis really kind of avoid those small quarrels?
I was wondering if they might go for the invade there, end up retreating just a little bit, quite a bit of damage, a little bit of threat there from the Genji Abathur hat. Both teams picking up their siege giants. Again, this is such a unique composition, the amount of damage that you could potentially take. Obviously, Arthlon on the Tyrael, so a man of many heroes, to say the least. He's just digging a little bit deeper into that hero pool.
And on the same note, with some of the kind of, you know, again, the results that we saw over the last game and how often he was kind of picked up on, and now a high-pressure hero like a Tyrael for Arthlon, definitely going to be interesting to see if he's able to clutch it out here, as he has been able to do so well throughout the entirety of part number 2 here for the team.
It's just, these games are so rare that we have strategies. You understand the core concept of the strategies, but the results, we don't get to see these often enough to where you're like, I can see it happening in a specific way, and this just brings such an interesting element to our game here. I'm excited to see how this plays out. And HeroesHearth, obviously the ones, they have the burden on their side to execute perfectly. Team Octalysis, we've seen teams when they go up against strategies that are unconventional do struggle at times, as we saw HeroesHearth struggle a little bit versus that Artanis comp last game.
Both teams end up picking up their knights at near even timing. HeroesHearth will get a slower cap, which is a pretty big advantage for them, and the fact that it will be able to help with the defense itself. and how little siege capabilities they have, they're going to need it. As that Hanzo poking away is going to be slightly problematic. The biggest thing, though, is about who controls I and who is able to get on the shots faster. Octalysis is the only team posturing right now to consume those shots, as HeroesHearth will end up getting their Genji towards mid. Only a small time advantage in favor of Octalysis, nothing too big. And HeroesHearth posturing, able to pick up I. Now, momentum swing for them.
And Octalysis is still just using that Blaze to double soak. And right now, they're doing a pretty good job of winning the temples. They got quite a few shots. Didn't give up a whole lot in the mid. Cure just missed his spear, so he's going to have to wait for help as Bud's quick to give it.
It's a huge cooldown when looking at the trade up between Genji and, Sonya in the 1v1, especially post 7. That cooldown ends up missing most of the time. Genji very easily can take that 1v1. Shot's going to be picked up here for HeroesHearth, still on the top half, and with that Genji transition towards mid, they are able to zone off here in the mid lane. A lot of shots here for HeroesHearth being won over, and they end up picking up the mule here at 7, so even if these shots end up getting picked up for Octalysis, likely going to be healed up there by that little robot.
Things playing out well here in the early game as the damage coming in here from HeroesHearth. Justin forced to use that face melt, and by a little bit of space, and shots went over the lead here structurally. HeroesHearth.
Octalysis, I'm trying to consider at this point in time, when is going to be the breaking point where if this kind of game keeps up where it's a problem, or where they need to look to be able to force. Because right now, HeroesHearth was been able to kind of dance around, which normally you'd be like, okay, that's not too big of a problem, but they were able to hold off. They still have the mule, and if those shots kind of get danced around in the same manner they just were over the next 2 shrine phases, suddenly this game structurally looks very, very lopsided in favor of HeroesHearth Esports. It feels like a lot of pressure is going to be put mainly onto the next shrine phase over the bottom, because it's a easy, reliable place to be able to force the fight, and then it's whether or not compositionally they can really go toe-to-toe into HeroesHearth, and more importantly, avoiding that Abathur kind of split soak and, double soak that he is so kind of famous for.
McIntyre getting some return damage there from Buds on the Karazim. We talked about the Iron Fist does trade well. So doing a pretty decent job right now in terms of defense. And again, when it comes to structures, Octalysis, they have to make sure that whenever they get some damage on them, Dread, they need to try and confirm it the rest of the way, because that's kind of going to be the name of the game, going against the mule as this game does go on. You can see just kind of the slow start here at the top. Abathur Hat going to make Goku reconsider his placement there.
It is one of the beauties of Abathur and compositions from beginning to end. It completely changes the offlane dynamic, because you always have the threat of, hey, this target may have the opportunity to kind of get healed, where Arthas Blaze isn't necessarily the most impressive matchup in the world, but it does get kind of a bit more, again, in favor of that Abathur Arthas. But you can do it with anything. We most notably saw it with, originally was Dahaka's. You would take any kind of matchup where you pick Dahaka and the opponent counter matches it. You're like, well, take an Abathur, and suddenly it becomes a good to a great lane very quick. 10s are picked up for both teams, as we now have 5 seconds until we've got the very second shrine phase of the game, and what I expect to be the kind of breaking point for either one of these teams.
I agree with you. It all comes down to how the real team fights play out. They obviously, a lot comes post level 10, but this is the first time we've got our single point objective, and right now it could go either way. You still have a lot of boss control potentially when you look at the...
There's a clone.
Scatter, yeah, their clone's coming out. BBJ instantly going in on that Arthas.
Yeah, double Arthas not getting a Howling Blast connect, and really not even getting any kind of positive trade into Octalysis is a major setback here. BBJ only still having about 5 to 10 more seconds on that clone. Throws out another Howling Blast. Justing looking to move up and zone off the point. Now clone down. This is Octalysis' moment to strike.
But how advantageous is this if Arthvon gets out of here, as he's going to be slid upon, see if he lives. Getting 3/4 of the shots and then trading out, knowing that you have Mule, that is definitely in your favor at this point.
It very much is in favor of HeroesHearth Esports. But as time goes on, those death timers are going to get a little bit, higher. Scaling and damage into the actual clone itself is likely going to get less successful. Hold up, though. The Mosh Pit is going to get pulled over here onto Arthvon and Cassia. HeroesHearth immediately lose one member, drop the bunker to tank a little bit of damage. That mule suddenly a lot less successful in healing up. Great job there from Octalysis, capitalizing on what we were just talking about, maybe a setback of how HeroesHearth then ended up playing that, but they are not giving them anything. Now trying to take this boss. Sanctification is available. Arthvon now looking to throw down the Eldruins. Ishbu already popped Army of the Dead.
He's going to hold on to the point, but McIntyre eating a lot of damage. He swift strikes through, trying to confirm a kill. They do confirm one. Dragon's Arrow is going to land directly onto the point. You can still try to hold on. There's a swift strike doing damage, but Ishbu is falling. Justin somehow survives in all of this. Arthlon, he's willing to die for this on the Tyrael. See if he can trade out.
Cure ends up getting that whirlwind to be able to heal up, ends up going down eventually. Now Goku trying to kite out, ends up using the bunker to survive through this. McIntyre, if he goes for that Swift Strike, might end up losing this trade. Actually, he has deflect. We'll find out. He goes for it.
Got him.
Trades up and drops the deflect at the end there. Abathur might get tracked down by Hanzo. No, he's going to be just fine for now. And the boss being dealt with now here for HeroesHearth Esports.
That was such an incredible turnaround. I mean, that boss right there. And the fact that McIntyre committed so much to those swift strikes, he didn't have his flow like water yet before that fight started, but willingly going through there, and it definitely helped out. And you can see this boss not even getting the wall if Mule is necessary and not needed elsewhere, Dreadnought. That boss all for naught, and the trade out definitely for HeroesHearth as they did get the favorable trade in those kills.
Yeah, HeroesHearth still is, kind of leading in this game, but I do feel like Octalysis did gain enough out of that and understanding how, or at least showed how they understand that when the, shots were consumed on the bottom half, that they still need to be able to get more out of that type of situation, and then found that is a bigger statement here than even the miracle response on the side of HeroesHearth Esports. Shots on bottom now going to be controlled for Octalysis while the siege for HeroesHearth continue here in the top lane. We'll be able to pick up that fort eventually with these knights, and because that information given, Octalysis spend their time looking to get a little bit damage here on the other parts of the map as well.
That camp up at the top, if it takes down that fort up at the top, which it most certainly will do, all of a sudden that middle temple no longer has to prioritize those shots. Instead, it will start looking towards that fort on the bottom. So the trade out, obviously, HeroesHearth catching up a bit in experience, the last fort remaining for both teams. And again, if that top one does not fall, the Mule will win out here, and experience starting to slowly get in HeroesHearth's favor.
The next shrine, Octalysis is going to be able to get the 16 versus 16 fight, but this is where they have hit the moment of, structurally they're falling quite a bit behind, especially with the secure of that bottom fort. The Talontiers, and the experience with the Abathur being able to split global on the side of Octalysis to be able to make up for that. Feels like that they're kind of hitting the moment where they need to just be able to force that kind of all in. We got it from them over the last, again, kind of shrine fight afterwards, but they need to be able to pull that trigger at a different point in time where it's not as easy for HeroesHearth to take what they need and then back out and go, okay, we've got our mule, we're going to get the positive trade on the objective.
If McIntyre gets the same type of swift strikes that he did before 13, now with flow like water plus the bonus damage each time you hit,
they're dead.
Next one, yeah, that is a very different looking team fight. And the amount of melee, the amount of clumping you do with a Kharazim will be, it'll be fun to watch to see if McIntyre can pull it off, because same buttons pressed in the same order, things look a lot different. Single temple phase, by the way, Dreadnought. 16 tier, probably not going to be here for Octalysis immediately for that. So I'm really curious how they approach this and whether they might try and cycle up towards another lane, use this composition, maybe take some structures down. Any thoughts?
I mean, the top fort had to be the focus for that small time frame, and for a moment we saw them kind of posturing around on the top half of the map, but with the 16, and there's nothing that HeroesHearth is going to be distracted for. Now there's a reason for HeroesHearth to go to the bottom half of the map, so if we're going to see any kind of play, it will be Octalysis with that, towards that area. If not, you can go for the soak over mid and top half and then get the pressure and collapse around on the bottom half of the map with the 16 talents here. Said they'll pick it up or get close to it here with that front wall. ETC with the flank.
Army's out. Dragon's Arrow's going to be there. Justin looking for an opportunity. There's the power slide. Kron's going to go down. Mosh Pit's going to be placed in there. That's going to be a second member falling. Although we have Sanctification as he's going to try and survive, but it doesn't look like maybe it is enough. Nope. There goes Arthas.
McIntyre tries to swift strike through, burns the deflect, and ends up killing Kharazim. But look at Dansky there on that Hanzo, able to keep himself alive. Arthalon getting the last Abathur hat, trying to track down, throwing the Eldruins, but natural agility out just to make sure nothing hairy happens here. And 4 for 0 wipe there in favor of in favor of Octalysis.
McIntyre was so close to that Dread. He was so close to getting that reset. He just missed his swift strike onto the Hanzo. By the way, we're about 15 seconds out from the boss starting with this control. I mean, this will take top fort, and it will also start doing more damage to that bot lane. If we're talking about Boss plus Temple hitting that bot lane, they might be threatening Keep and more here in the very near future.
There's an interesting choice now. Do they finish the shots, or do they push with this boss in specifically? Because the boss and the shots are the safest objective to be able to pick up, but if you get this boss, you can let it take a little bit of free damage and then make sure you get to keep 100% with the shots down below. Octalysis continue capturing, which means they're forced to siege up with this. If they get 1 to 2 kills, might even look to end the game. Keep in mind that, you know, that kind of maybe sacrificing your body to get damage on the core strategy doesn't work against an Abathur with a Mule, so it's once you start the core, you're looking to end the game.
Boss and 3 Siege Giants here as they siege up in the bot lane. Ishbu and team going directly in, trying to find out, but the boss slam gets the initial stun. McIntyre diving into the back line. Clone gonna be here. BBJ brings out the Genji clone. Swift strikes through. Damage onto this boss the entire time. BBJ clone is gone. Now all of a sudden, Heroes Hearth, they're on defense of this keep.
Octalysis move up, get a lot of damage there. A little bit of pressure with Buds onto McIntyre. Goku burns a jet propulsion, but Ishbu's going to be fine for now. The keep ends up falling. Power slide, mosh pit going to be burnt there. Valkyrie goes through, but already Genji ends up dropping. Octalysis is a man up and now marching, looking to break the base and take this game. Sanctification ends up getting used there, a little bit off point, and the members of Heroes Hearth panicked as they're trying to defend. I think Team Octalysis has done it here, J-Hal.
50% and falling, and Octalysis is going to go up 2-1 in this series, as they are going to whittle away at the remaining parts of that core, and one big fight is all it came down to, and it definitely went over in favor of Octalysis, thwarting the supportless pseudo-support Abathur comp here from Heroes Hearth.
It started out looking very difficult to be able to deal with, a very oppressive composition at the beginning half of that. And then, as we said, that one initiation on the bottom half and then a team fight later on, and suddenly we found Octalysis in full control, fan.
Yeah, those fights were extremely close. The key point about a lot of those fights was the ETC mosh pit. There was only one interrupt in the entire composition, and that was the Valkyrie from the